is back in session. Roll call.
Carlson. Vieira. Maniscalco.
Here.
Hurtek.
Here.
Goods.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
And Citro.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
I have been told that Councilman Carlson will not be joining us, and he will be remote in this evening's cases. We're going to take agenda item number 5.
I believe
Unless
we're
Mr.
still on,
Massey-
I still think we're on item number 6, and now we're moving into the privately initiated plan
Okay,
amendments.
okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 6, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Council, Dr. Coordination. And I'm here to present to you today our set of privately initiated amendments. This is a part of the January 2022 amendment cycle, and there are a total of 4 privately initiated amendments that are with this cycle. And so what I'd like to do is to present, give you an overview of each amendment request. And then I will turn it over to the applicant for each request to give their presentation and give you a description of what they are requesting. And then we'll follow that up with questions. After the 4 are presented, we'll give the time frame. I can go over the time frame in the next step. So let me get to the privately initiated real quick. Here we are. So the 4 that we have, we'll start with the first applicant, which is Colin Rice. And this is a request to amend the bonus provisions, and this is for the Channel District. So this request would amend Code Section 27-140, which is the bonus provision section of the code. This is what you would mostly see with a site plan zoning if an applicant is requesting bonus density or FAR. Then that calculation is utilized to determine the bonus amount. This request is to amend the cost ratio, which is a part of that calculation that is used to determine that bonus. It will be amended from 10-to-1 to 100-to-1. When this was initially submitted, it was citywide. We worked with the applicant. The applicant amended the request, and it will pertain to the Channel District only. And what I've done is given an example of what the FAR payment would be at that 10-to-1 ratio and what it would be if it were a 100-to-1 ratio. If this is approved, so today it is before you for workshop, it still has to go through the various phases. We would have to go before Planning Commission, come back to council for first and second reading. And if this were approved, this new ratio would take effect after the adoption of this approved ordinance. And so what I'm gonna do right now is turn it over to the applicant. I believe they are here in the back of the room, and let them give you the presentation. And then I am available if you have any questions, council. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Andy Mates, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard. Colin Rice and I are here with the Shoemaker firm on behalf of Mr. Stoltenberg to talk about an issue over in the Channel District where what has been presented and what has worked with the code there has allowed the development on the periphery to happen and to take place. What's left over there now yet to be developed are some small parcels that, because of cost of construction, material escalation, and other issues, are causing those to have to go high and to really look towards more point towers to fill the small parcels that are left in that area. The bonus ratio of 10-to-1, we're asking to be adjusted to 100-to-1 to create the application of an incentive to the developer rather than a disincentive, because right now it's causing what we already know to have to increase in FAR and go high. Is causing the developer to have to pay, in some instances, millions of dollars in bonus density costs, which Ken will talk about. It really have caused people to look at the projects and say, hey, they don't pencil, we can't do them. So the text amendment in and of itself is very short and simple. Take 10-to-1, replace it with 100-to-1. But we believe that this is going to really foster supply, which I know council wants to do, wants to increase supply, especially in those areas that have been meant to be highly dense, it's like the Channel District. We don't believe that there have been a significant number of instances where the bonus density provision, as currently written and applied, has really resulted in significant dollars back to the city. Often those bonus density issues are covered with other areas of construction or implementation. And so I think, as you saw earlier today, this whole bonus density concept is one that probably should be reviewed, is suggested to be reviewed within the code. And we're asking that you allow what you intended to allow to happen, is for highly dense areas of construction to take place in the Channel District. So, Mr. Stoltenberg, anything you want to add?
Yes, yes. My name's Ken Stoltenberg. I reside at 1208 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, 33602. I am an affected party by this. I want to make that clear to everybody, as I am a property owner in the Channel District. And I was one of the ones actually who worked with the city to develop this bonus density system almost 15 years ago. And what I've seen over a long period of time is there really haven't been any developments. Well, there may have been bonus density agreements executed, which called for a large payment. Those developments never happened, so the city didn't make any money. The only appreciable thing that was done, and I'm quite familiar with it because I was involved with it, was we donated as part of Channel Club about a third of the land that is now Madison Street Park as a contribution towards bonus density. To give you an example, I have a project called Elevate 61, which has a bonus density agreement with the city with a payment of almost $2.2 million. So what that effectively does is it quadruples the amount of impact fees that one would have to pay to develop in the Channel District as opposed to downtown, which doesn't have that. So it's really acting now as a hindrance. The code calls for this ratio to be looked at periodically, and because the costs of land and the costs of building materials over the past 15 years have increased greatly, especially the land costs in the Channel District, what it does is it makes the provision unworkable for a lot of people. So for the parcels that are left to reach their highest and best potential, you've really got to go high to get water views. And you really can't go over 15 or 16 stories at 3.5 FAR. So to have the provision work as it was intended to enhance things in the Channel District, that's what we're asking for. The other component is key. When this was enacted, and this is a good news story. You guys don't get enough of those, by the way. When the Channel District became a CRA, the entire Channel District was valued at $37.5 million. That's 220 acres, including the port property. It is now valued at over $1 billion. So the revenue has gone into the CRA from about 200,000 to about 10 million on an annual basis. So all the things that the bonus density were supposed to address have basically already been addressed. It's a very short list of things that still have to be done to do everything in the Channel District plan as far as, burying the power, street, sewer improvements, that type of thing. Everything's pretty much been done, or there is money available that the city currently has on hand or will be available within the next year or two to meet most of the goals in the strategic action plan. So the purpose for having the bonus density really doesn't exist anymore. And again, ladies and gentlemen, that's a good thing because the neighborhood has developed and is probably one of the most successful CRAs in the state. What I'm asking for is for this to, I'm using a mechanism that's already in the code that you're supposed to revisit every so many years to make it what it was intended to be in the beginning, an incentive to go denser as opposed to a disincentive. Right now, why would you try to do something at 7.0 in the Channel District when you can go into the city, into the CBD, and do something at 10.0 and not pay a dime? So it's really hindering the further revenue generation of the Channel District. Heck, I'd like to see the revenue, the appraised value of the Channel District property be $2 billion in 5 years, and it probably will be. But this is it's somewhat antiquated. The purpose for it doesn't exist because the money's already there. That's not a problem that, most governments have a lot of the time. In this case, it is, and again, that's a good story. So I want to reset it to what it was originally intended to do. So hopefully people do come in and build more point towers, and instead of paying, say, $2 million, they're paying $200,000. That gives the city and the CRA, revenue in the future to do more good things. But the way that I look at it is where you're really losing money in the Channel District are all the vacant parcels that are generating maybe $100,000 a year. Don't worry about one that's you're hoping to get a one-time bonus density payment of $2 million. If my project, my Elevate project, one of the reasons it didn't get off the ground just before COVID was because of the bonus density payment. My partner at the time, who you've heard of, called Coulter, said, hey, Ken, if we didn't have to pay this, it'd be a lot easier to say yes. Well, that was March 13th, 2020. We all know what happened after that, and Coulter went away. But I can't say that's why it didn't happen, but I can say that going forward, leaving it the way it is not good for the Channel District, and it's going to cost the city of Tampa tens of millions of dollars of tax revenue over the next 30 or 40 or 50 years. Amending it, as we're saying, is going to make the city more money right now in actual payments, if you look at the history of what's happened, and it's going to generate tens of millions of dollars of new revenue because people are going to build in the Channel District at a density ratio that's already codified, that makes sense for the number and size of the parcels that are left. That's all I have.
Thanks, Chairman. We thank the city staff. They've been very cooperative throughout the process. We've worked together well to make some modifications and ensure that we can bring to you something that everybody can agree upon, and we ask you to look favorably upon the recommendation. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Is there any questions for staff?
So Council, LaShawn, Doc Development Coordination. If it is council's desire, if we could have a motion to transmit this text amendment to the Planning Commission, please.
From what I read here, it says staff has no objection to this request. Am I correct?
No objections,
Thank
correct.
you very much.
I would just double check to make sure there's no one else in the public that wants to comment. That's
Is there anyone in the chambers that would like to make a public comment? Councilman Goods.
Mr. Chair, we have Sandy Sanchez online that would like to provide public comment for this item.
Can we hold off? We have a council member that has a question.
Okay.
Just for informational purpose, normally, where does that bonus density money go to?
Well, for the, it's typically a project that's been identified to a CIP project, capital improvement.
That may not be in that area, correct?
Well, within that area, the project would be identified, and then what happens is the agreement is drafted. If council approves that agreement, let's say with the rezoning, by the time the developer or the applicant gets to permitting, and they permit it, it could be years later. So we check to see, is that project still open? If that project has been complete, then we work with mobility to find another project in that area where those funds could be applied.
Dealing with infrastructure, housing, or just various, or is it specifically designated dollars?
It's specific to that capital improvement project or a similar project that's in the area. As a part of your bonus density that is available under 27-140, there are other options available to you to achieve bonus, whether it's providing 10% affordable housing. Currently, the way the code is structured, there are several other amenities that can be provided for you to reach that bonus, or you can make the payment.
That's what I was looking at, the keyword housing. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Who do we have online?
Sandra Sanchez. Sandra, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes to speak.
This is still agenda item number 6, correct?
I did, excuse me, no. I signed up to speak on item number 5.
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
nothing to say on item number 6.
And that's the reason why I'm asking. Is there anybody online to speak on item number 6?
We have Camilo Soto. Camilo, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Mr. Soto, are you there? Do we have anybody else online to speak to item number 6?
Jean Strohmeyer. Jean, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes to speak.
To this. I have nothing further to add at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Ms. Stephanie Pointer there?
Stephanie, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. You have to.
I'm here. Is this Tampa Heights? I'm sorry, I had to do like work.
No, ma'am,
Is
this
this
is
Tampa
not.
Heights? No?
No, ma'am.
Then next.
Thank you very much. What is the,
Second.
we have a motion to transmit from Councilman Maniscalco, seconded from Councilman Vieira. Roll call vote.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Hurtak. Yes. Carlson. Goulds,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Citro.
Yes,
Motion carried unanimously with Carlson being absent at vote.
thank you.
Council, thank you so much, LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. And let's move to our second private amendment for today. This is a request from the applicant, Ricky Pederica. This is a request to amend the zoning code, the natural resources section of the code. In addition, this would create bicycle standards. So this would establish a 27-283.16 section of the code. And the applicant has worked with natural resources staff in addition to development coordination. The zoning administrator has modified the language for what you have before you today. And what's listed is all the code sections under this request. Some of the sections that are listed, they are clarifications in the code as it is written, and they were updates that were required, that were needed to these sections. And the definition of grand tree was the first modification, and that adds the condition rating to that definition, but otherwise, the other modifications are minor in some cases, in most of the cases, with the exception of the tree table. And the applicant is here, and what I'd like to do is turn it over to the applicant, but the staff has no objections to this request as presented. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. Ricky Pederica with Dark Moss, 308 East 7th Avenue. Thank you for entertaining this. In an effort to keep the day from getting longer, I'm going to try to bridge my presentation, but as Ms. Dock mentioned, I'm proposing several cleanup items for the 27-284 natural resource section based on my experience working with the new tree code from 2019. There was discussion when we were considering that code of revisiting it in approximately 2 years from adopting it. That didn't seem like it was going to happen, and I wanted to be the change I wanted to see in some of those things. So I wanted to clarify grand trees because discussions would come up between me and staff and the neighborhood on what a grand tree really should be per the urban forest management plan and what I understood to be the goals of the canopy study, which is good quality mature tree canopy, not all tree canopies, including poor or hazardous trees, especially in the context of the new Florida statute 163.045. And another provision we're correcting is a very kind of obvious one with Seminole Heights requiring 4-foot diameter trees, which would be grand trees to be planted back for all new construction. It's a simple fix. There was discussion in the prior tree code in 2018-2019 on the value of a class 1 or category 1 invasive species, camphor trees, which are valuable in several streets around the city, but they are disincentivized near wetlands. That was what was proposed before. It just so happened the way that the mitigation was calculated for these trees, this specific species, grand trees required less mitigation than protected trees. I'm proposing a fix to that, and staff agrees. The landscape buffering table, and this is very granular but very frustrating for many in development. It was restructured in 2019 in a less than intuitive way, just graphically and conceptually, and I believe there was a copy-paste error too. So we're proposing just kind of a cleanup of that and a simplification. And then there is a provision, I feel like Councilman Citro would maybe remember this site, Henderson and Dale Mabry, triangular site where it was a redeveloped property with palm trees that I had to go before requesting a variance for a retention percentage reduction. And Councilman Citro said, well, I don't see any trees, looking at the area. And, because there were only 15 or so palm trees on the site. It's not my belief that the canopy study intends, or in the urban forestry management plan, intends to value all trees equally. So a palm tree in the eye of this section of the code is equal to the grandest grand tree in the city of Tampa. They're just one tree. And it frequently becomes a waiver on a redevelopment site that I'm typically involved with in a rezoning. And I don't think the goal that provision was made for is in line with the canopy study and the management plan. And so I'm proposing to provide a weighted criteria similar to the tree table, where trees that are more higher valued per the urban forestry management plan are granted more preservation value, and trees that are smaller or more easier to replace are granted a lower value. And that provision adds complexity but becomes optional too if a professional is involved and they don't want to get involved to that level of species ID and negotiation. Finally, Tampa now ranks as #1 in the United States as a bicycle-friendly business, or of the number of bicycle-friendly businesses awarded by the League of American Bicyclists in January 2021, in spite of no citywide bicycle parking dimensional standards or guidelines, except for temporary special events. No other use. So in disbelief, I did some research with some neighboring jurisdictions, looked at guidance from ABBP, and suggested what I think is a modest set of provisions that are using best practices recommended from bicycle and pedestrian advocates to propose a framework for the city of Tampa to step into the realm of structured bicycle regulation. So I hope for your support and welcome any questions.
Any questions? Councilwoman Hurtak.
Just want to say thank you for the bicycle parking standards. I'm a cyclist, and it is really hard to find bike parking, and when it is there, it's not always great. So really look forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I know of at least 4 or 5 people that are saying thank you about the bicycle parking also. At least 4 or 5 people. Ms. Federica, this whole concept and idea about camphor trees goes way back to when you and I were both on Variance Review Board.
Absolutely.
We couldn't understand the concept of why they were so valued as much as a grand tree, but I thank you. Is there anybody in chambers who wishes to speak to this public comments? All right, is there anybody online?
Online, we have the same 3 registered speakers: Camilo Soto, Jean Strohmeyer, and Stephanie Pointer.
Quickly, Ms. Strohmeyer, are you there? Ms. Pointer, are you there?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to say that Mr. Federica has the most well-written, privately initiated text amendment that I've seen and actually read. It was very well done, and I wholeheartedly support this. Other people should have learned from him, and we wouldn't have wanted to get rid of him. Thank you.
Mr. Soto, are you there? Ms. Federica, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure we're still #1 10 years from now.
Motion is made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira. Roll call vote.
Miranda,
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Carlson, Goulds,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Carlson being absent at vote.
Okay, thank you, Council. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. And this is the 3rd request for today. This is a privately initiated amendment from the applicant, Brian Seal. This request is to create Tampa Heights design standards. This is something, council, you may have heard at various rezoning hearings, the creation of this code, how it was in process. So we're happy to say we're moving forward with it at this stage. What this would do is create an overlay design district and create standards within that overlay. And this would actually, I have a map of the boundary, if I could have just the overhead briefly, please. This would be inclusive of the Tampa Heights neighborhood. This is the northern boundary is MOK. Is my map up? Oh, here we go.
If you
Thank
could
you so
raise it
much.
up just a little bit so we can see the entire map. Thank you.
Let me zoom out a little bit more. So the northern boundary is MOK. The interstate is to the east. And then North Boulevard, it will run to the center line of North Boulevard. This map has to be amended. The red is the boundary for this overlay, but it would less out the Heights area. That area, as you know, has their own design standards that would apply through their development. So, but this gives an idea of the area contained within the overlay. And if I can have the PowerPoint again, please. And so there's the request includes standards that would apply to residential development. That is the bulk of the standards that are inclusive in the change. And there is a small section that would apply to commercial or mixed-use development, and that's relating to parking offsets. But the residential development includes the residential standards for things like placement of building entry, the garages, fencing, things of that nature. I'm not sure if the applicant is online. Brian Seal was going to try to log in and participate virtually. I know he is out of town, and I don't know if he has anyone else online.
I am here. Can anybody see and hear me?
Okay, he's here.
Yes, sir.
So I'll turn it over to Brian to give the presentation. And I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, LaShawn. Good afternoon, honorable council members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today. If possible, I would like to share my screen. I'm looking for the option to do that. Anybody in the, I apologize, anybody in the room can give me guidance quickly on
Madam Clerk?
share screen? Or know if I have, there we go. Thank you. All right. Now, can everybody see the
Yes, sir. Do you have
presentation?
the option to enlarge it one more time, to make it full screen? If not, I am good with this. The rest of the council good with this? Yep. Yes, go ahead and proceed.
Okay. Unfortunately, there we go. Excellent. Thank you again. I want to take a few minutes to present the Tampa Heights Overlay District Code Amendment. It is something that hopefully all of you will recall has been mentioned several times. We've reached out to each of you over the course of the last year and a half or so and met with many of you council members about this. The main goal of this code amendment is to enact new standards to create a walkable and transit supportive urban design in Tampa Heights. And we're accomplishing that through some very targeted reforms. Site layout, vehicle access to alleys, encouraging front porches, incentivizing accessory dwelling units, which is in line with something that you heard earlier today, relaxing commercial parking minimums, and preserving green space and preserving on-street parking. We really view this as a comprehensive thing that ties together with many of the other issues that are going on in the city. And we've had a great working relationship with city staff that has been supportive of these efforts as well as helpful in this. And overall, here's our request, is that we ask that the city first help pass this overlay district then follow up with an updated neighborhood plan for Tampa Heights. We have been working off of our neighborhood plan, which was adopted by council in 2003. A lot of great change has happened in Tampa Heights that is in line with that, but we're in need of that. We'd also like to establish a commercial tax district or business improvement district for Franklin, Florida, Columbus corridors. And I'll touch on a little bit of those issues later. And follow up this overlay with a permanent overlay that regulates all of land development for Tampa Heights based on the TOD study. That's incredibly important to us. The way we're looking at this overlay is this is a quick surgical way to address development issues that have been going on in the neighborhood, but it is not as comprehensive as the neighborhood needs. The TOD study, which has been working through public engagement and issued their draft recommendations, our neighborhood is wholeheartedly behind, and it's form-based code, and it goes far beyond what this is, but it will take more time to implement. So we look at this as step one, and these other items as following steps to that ultimately are going to yield the most walkable, diversified, mixed use, and transit-friendly neighborhood in Tampa. I want to hit on a brief history of this effort and why this is coming to you in the form of a privately initiated text amendment. So in 2000, the local historic district was created, which nearly mirrors the National Historic District of Tampa Heights from 1995. Now that only encompasses about a third of the neighborhood because there was not the concentration of contributing historic structures in the rest of the neighborhood. Unfortunately, we weren't able to go further than that, but the neighborhood at that time and leadership wanted to continue and follow with a form-based code that echoed the historic district regulations. And they attempted to do that for several years. After Seminole Heights, we were told we were next in line, and in 2014, we have in writing that we were promised by the city for form-based code overlay that was going to commence in 2015. And so we look at 2015 as a key year when that promise was made that this would occur. Every year thereafter, we've petitioned the city and said, well, when is this happening? When are we getting the overhaul? We were especially afraid because of the wonderful Armature Works development. As soon as that opened, we knew there was going to be an inrush of out-of-state, out-of-area interest in Tampa Heights, and without any additional protections to protect our unique urban character, that it was going to be a free-for-all, and that's really what's occurred since 2017 when Armature Works opened. Had the overlay been put into place in 2015, 2016 as promised by the city initially, we wouldn't be here needing to present a PETA. We picked back up the effort in 2019, working with city staff and the Planning Commission, and in July of 2021, we submitted this PETA and have been working with staff since. There's a lot of words on here, but I just wanted to reference that we do not just pursue this for the sake of some folks' opinions, whether personal or professional opinions, but we are guided by the Tampa Heights Civic Association. The approach to have a walkable, mixed-use, pedestrian, bike, and transit-friendly community goes back to 2003 to our community plan, as well as establishing that we do have a very historic character of the urban design in this neighborhood. It's also supported by the land development codes, mentioned numerous times throughout the current comprehensive plan about pre-World War II development patterns throughout the city, including Tampa Heights, as well as other language about how to orient things to the street, how to locate parking, how to create good urban infill development in our urban villages. So what we did was we went through the neighborhood that is not in the historic district and did an architectural inventory. So a key number that I want to just present to you quickly in here is the 61%. So we looked up through the property appraisers each year of construction of homes and did a windshield survey of the compatibility with the urban design of the neighborhood, and classified things really as pre and post 2015. And what you'll see in both the green, dark green, which is a pre-World War II home, and the light green, which is post-World War II, is that 60% of the homes in this area, not just homes, but buildings, whether they're multifamily or single-family homes, meet that urban layout. And what you see in the light red here, that's a lot of the post-World War II, 1950s, 1960s homes that are being bought up for expensive sums of money and torn down and replaced. And they are not contributing to the character of the neighborhood, but as they're replaced with density, which we welcome, that we want it to be in that proper urban character. So what does that look like here? Well, Sean had previously shown you our borders, and I just wanted to again call that up for where our historic district is and how that fits in within Tampa Heights, and clarify that we are not amending the historic district standards. There are some folks throughout this process in our community that wanted to extend the entire historic district to cover the whole neighborhood, or find a way to more strongly echo the architectural standards in there. But we wanted to make sure we focused on the urban design, which is how that affects pedestrians and vehicles and transit and biking and the real urban layout without getting into the weeds. So none of this has anything to do with architectural styles of homes and buildings. So what I want to show you, aside, if you ignore the architectural style, because these are some similar examples, but all of these were built in that post-2015 period. And I want to point out some of the things that our code amendment will do, and some issues that we had here that we're seeking. If you'll see on these, on 3 of these photos, you have extremely wide driveways that take up almost the entire front lawn, and create new vehicle crossings where folks regularly park over the sidewalk, and it completely eliminates our on-street parking, as well as eliminating green space in front yards. When all of these properties have alley access, and I might add, all of these properties have free and clear alley access for vehicle loading. And so that's one of the key provisions of what we want to do. The one in the lower center is, I believe, 8 or 9 townhomes oriented in a T. When all of those, and the one facing you is directly on North Boulevard, which again fills that up with concrete and driveways. The one that is incomplete in this picture is facing the street to the south with, again, front loading, when this could entirely have had alley and rear loading. Then the picture to your upper right is unique in that it does have smaller ribbon curbs, but doesn't make full use of the alley for all vehicle loading, as well as does not have any front-facing doors. So there's no visibility on the first floor facing the public right-of-way, which is incredibly important to neighborhood interaction and engagement. Here's some proposed examples of how this happens, as well as where, again, we're not making use of existing alleys, excessive pedestrian and crossings. The one on the lower is something, so it's been brought up about the recent alum PETA that allowed courtyards by right across the entire city. This one on the bottom is a project by that developer in this neighborhood that has access to a rear and a side alley. The side alley is completely unused for vehicle loading. This is something that our civic association objected to, but that was not, the design exception was granted nonetheless by staff, and you could get much different design outcomes. That property effectively eliminates all on-street parking in front of its approximately 80 feet of street frontage because of this design. But it's not all a negative story. There are compatible examples. The difficulty is is that as a neighborhood association and as a city right now, given the fact that Tampa Heights outside the historic district is only covered by basic city land development code, there's no real way to intervene until something goes to a rezoning. This just came before you in May for rezoning with our civic association's support. This developer was extremely amenable to work with us, made adjustments to their site plan. What you see on the site plan to the plan north is using their alley for all front loading of these townhomes. To the south, which is Ola Avenue, which is slated to become a bikeway under city and FDOT plans, is a bicycle-friendly approach to development that has no vehicle crossings in front of what's designated to be a bikeway, as well as wrapping the corner with porches and visibility through windows. So there are great examples happening, and this is what we want to codify to have happen without staff and citizens and council having to go fight all these. Again, some of these designs do selectively happen. What you see on this slide is all compatible examples of structures that were built post 2015. Again, when we would have hoped to have had this in place, but what you can see are 3 of these photos are townhomes. None have front-facing garages, all use alley loading for them. What you see on the top left is a new single-family home that, as part of this PETA, it doesn't ban outright vehicle crossings on the named street. It just incentivizes use of the alley, and where it must, for one purpose or another, use that street, that it limits the width. So here you see a limited width compatible front driveway. Now I want to dive into the commercial portion of this PETA. Initially, it was intended to cover just residential zoned areas, again, because we're looking at this as a strategic and surgical approach to what's going on. Again, Tampa Heights needs a much deeper, comprehensive approach to all of our zoning in our urban village. But in order to catch the development that's been going on and again, surgically correct some of those issues as things are being built day by day in our neighborhood, we intended to cover mostly residential zones. However, in discussion with staff and upon the completion of the TOD study and draft as well, we had been wanting to include some commercial corridor regulation, but because that goes so deep into TOD, what we were encouraged to do was make additions and find a way to incentivize more commercial development on our corridors, hence the portion of this PETA that reduces the minimum parking requirements for commercial properties in the neighborhood. So what you're seeing on your screen right here is a shining example of the lack of commercial development in Tampa Heights. You're all probably familiar with what's going on in the Armature Works District within the Tampa Heights CRA, south of the interstate where we're cut off from downtown and the growth that's happened along Franklin Street to the south. You're probably also aware of all the great growth that's happened in Seminole Heights on Florida Avenue. Seminole Heights begins at East Martin Luther King Boulevard going north, and all of the Michelin award-winning restaurants that go in along Florida Avenue, when that neighborhood has a very similar urban form to Tampa Heights. And that development simply has not happened between Seminole Heights and downtown, smack where Tampa Heights lies. And part of that issue is what's highlighted in red is all surface parking. So the picture on your right, you'll see Franklin Street, which is one of our key urban, small downtown-like streets that we'd like to fill in with this. There's a reason that development hasn't crept up north of downtown to here or east from the Armature Works site, is because there's far too strict of parking requirements to create walkable form here. The same goes for the Columbus Drive and Tampa Street and Florida Avenue corridor, which, as marked in our neighborhood plan, is the node of Tampa Heights. Tampa Heights is separated from the north half and the south half by Columbus Drive, and this really, in all of the plans that have been created for Tampa Heights, is the commercial hub of the neighborhood. And we need to see this infilled with great mixed-use development, but it's never going to happen with such high parking requirements as are standard in the city code. And so really we want to tackle portions of this PETA for the residential incompatibility and incentivizing use of those alleys to limit pedestrian crossing. We want a more walkable community, and we want more commercial development incentivized that's going to serve our quickly densifying neighborhood. Many of you are familiar with Lee's Grocery in Tampa Heights. That's one of our key models that we put out there. It's been voted several times as the best pizza in Tampa, a great craft beer and pizza place. That has 0 off-street parking spots. And so, but in order for folks to take the risk and go through that, there's so many hoops to jump through in order to be granted relief from these parking minimums. But if we preserve our on-street parking by using our alleys, then we leave that on-street parking open for guests of residents as well as guests of our businesses. And then we can take away our off-street parking requirements for small business, as well as limiting them for larger commercial sites, and really bring an influx of development to Tampa Heights. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open for questions, and thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Seal?
Chairman, I have no problem with the alleys, provided they're wide enough to make the turn into, you know, if you have a certain section by the transportation department, you must have, I forget, 18 or 20 feet. I forget what it was, turning ratio or something.
Yes, it must meet the standards, the technical standards.
Thank you, Councilman Vieira. Anybody else? Councilman Goods?
That's also where taxing district.
That was mentioned by the applicant as something that would come in the future.
Curious about that.
Good afternoon, Nicole Travis, Administrator of Development and Economic Opportunity. Any business improvement district or any special taxing district would have to come before this body, would have to go through extensive public comment. So it's an idea by the applicant, and it's something that you can consider at a future time and request more information on that. So,
thank you.
Correct, if I could chime in on that. We are not requesting that as a part of this overlay. That is, again, part of the future steps that we would like to take and discuss with council and city staff.
And to
Chairman.
Councilman Vieira's point, Councilman Miranda's point, there was, we had passed something about alleyway parking that has been challenged repeatedly since it has gone through. So again, I'm hoping that the standards can be there for these alleyways so that alleyway parking is not challenged repeatedly over and over and over again. Any other comments or questions?
Chairman, if I may,
Yes,
LaShawn
ma'am.
Dodd, Development Coordination. I just wanted to put on the record, I did mention that this was the creation of the Tampa Heights overlay. So this would create Code Section 27-244. This would also amend 27-156. As a part of this request, the ADUs will be allowed as a permitted use within the Tampa Heights district, so that would amend that table. I did not list the code sections, and I apologize, I'll have it for first reading in the slide itself, but I just wanted to put on the record, those are the two sections of change with this request. And that's the language you have in your records.
Ms. Feely, I saw you get up. Is there anything you want to add?
Abby Feely, based on your direction given this morning in creating ADUs throughout the city, I don't know that we would need to change the use table in order to allow them in Tampa Heights. I think we're going to now have them throughout the city as a specified use, so I can discuss that with Ms. Dock, but I just don't think that we probably need to do that at this time. So ADUs will now be coming forward as a specified use. If Mr. Seal has any differential to what was discussed this morning in terms of the ADU, he can get with staff on that before, but I don't know if there were specific criteria running with the ADU for the inclusion in Tampa Heights, but we'll get that worked out.
If I may I add a comment to that?
Sure, Mr. Seal, please.
Thank you. Yes, this again is something that our residents and the leadership of our civic association has been feeling very strongly about in dealing with the affordable housing. Again, we submitted this PETA 11 months ago officially, with that provision included in there to allow ADUs by right across the neighborhood as something that is appropriate to historic neighborhoods and occurs quite frequently, but also something to deal with affordability, as we've been one of the biggest crunched areas of the city with change in affordability. So I would be glad to discuss how that can be appropriately worded in this text amendment with staff running parallel to what council is considering citywide or across central Tampa. But I do want to be sure that it is included for Tampa Heights, despite what action may or may not happen with the parallel code changes. Thank you.
Is there any public comment in chambers?
Good afternoon, Council. Steve Michelini. I've worked with a number of different development individuals and companies in the Tampa Heights area, and I just have one concern, and that is mandating the use of the alleys. There are mitigating circumstances when you can't use that. And if you may recall, just a month or so ago, you all removed that requirement from the West Tampa overlay for the very reasons that I'm speaking of. So if you want to make the use of the alleys recommended as opposed to mandated, we can support that. But once you start mandating exactly how you design a building and how you access it, I think you run into problems, because Tampa Heights, just like other parts of the city, are not the same. It's not homogeneous. It's not this, throughout the whole area. You have different widths of alleys, you have different lengths and widths of lots, and you have different circumstances. So that's my only comment. I've worked with Brian quite a bit and supportive of the other recommendations that they're making. However, I would strongly recommend that you not mandate the access via an alley. You can recommend it, but I wouldn't recommend that you mandate that. I think that in some brief discussions with others that they have similar concerns as well. But I appreciate your time, and I would strongly recommend that you remove the mandate from the alleys. Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Is Mr. Seal still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, because on our slide it says that alley access is encouraged. What does your actual language say?
So I believe the current actual language does require it. However, there are relief valves for that. So let me pull this up and I can read it very quickly to you. All new driveways for zoning lots less than 70 feet in width shall orient all new vehicular access through an adjacent improved alley. Parcels which do not abut an alley or abut an alley that is not navigable by vehicle may improve the alley to city standards or provide alley access pursuant to the table below. For parcels with existing driveways which will remain without improvement shall not be subject to this criteria. Modification of existing driveways are subject to this criteria, the determination of the zoning administrator. And then it goes into a little bit of further details about irregular lots and such. But I would like to comment that this is the first I've heard of opposition from Mr. Michelini. We do work together on quite a few cases on opposite sides of the table, but we have a good working relationship on the clients he represents. However, really making this, watering it down in strength is really going to defeat some of the purpose of this, which is creating a walkable community through good urban design. And I might add that we have publicly advertised this PETA in every one of our association emails for over a year, as well as posted on our website, read it aloud at nearly every other monthly association meeting, if not discuss certain details of it. I have not received any written opposition over the course of the year from anyone. In fact, we have quite a bit of written endorsement by others in the development community. I myself am in the real estate development community, and I think there's some that may disagree with this, but you know, there's going to be others that support it, that see that unique, historic, urban village character that the comp plan talks about and supports, and all other documents support. This is a way to help create and enforce that unique character. And so we'd be glad to continue working with everyone in the development community about this. Some of the pictures I've showed you previously in the presentation of what we call incompatible urban design, I have point by point discussed with the developer of 3 of those properties, and working together to tweak the code to something that's palatable to that community. And we've got the support of some very notable developers in the neighborhood. I know Adam Harden of Soho Capital wrote to you all this week in support of that. So I think there might be a couple that that could oppose it, but I don't think that is anywhere close to representative of the development community's feelings.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. We have Councilman Goods with a question.
You
Who
know,
is this directed to?
Well, I'm different, Mr. Seal and Mr. McLean here too. I mean, for me, when I look at these alleys in the city, they're all various in different sizes and shapes. Some of them are not even drivable. So to mandate, even at Tampa Heights community, I've driven through there, I've driven police cars through there, I couldn't get through there, I've driven through a lot of these alleys, and some of them are undrivable. So I would hate to just put a mandate saying you have to do an alleyway when you may not be able to create the alleyway. So I think you have to look at some language, if it can go through, to where there are some extenuating circumstances, because every block is not going to be a driveway alley. You have some alleys that have big trees in them. You look over on Amelia now, with the alleyway with the flooding, with the alleys over there as well. So I got some concerns about manning the alley, because, you know, we're not fixing the alleys. And I don't know if the developers are going to fix an alley, because when I look again on Amelia, with the pool, with the new construction of buildings are going up higher and those others are lower, flooding, there are a lot of concerns. And so I have some concerns about just saying manning the alley. I think it has to be some, maybe some extenuating circumstances, but I just really don't know about manning the closure of the alleys.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
See, and I'm going to completely disagree with you on this, because when you have alley access, you actually are adding more parking. You're adding on-street parking as well as garage and driveway parking. And as for the alley size and width, that's the city's problem. We haven't maintained those, and no, it is our problem. And we have to go through and work on those. In the West Tampa overlay, they're requiring developers to fix those, or rather, developers are choosing to fix those. And if you want to come into an urban neighborhood like Tampa Heights, I mean, this is how this neighborhood developed. I mean, do you know how hard it is to bike on a street like that with constant driveways? That's not how this urban core was developed. So I don't disagree that some of the alleys can be difficult. Let's find a way to make them better, instead of saying, well, maybe we should just have more driveways, because more driveways in the urban core is absolutely not okay.
Councilman Miranda,
I'm not going to
I will
debate,
make a
I'm not
comment.
going to say that everything is fine, everything is not fine. I can only tell you that there are some alleys on West Tampa that are built where you have to enter through the back. There's one on the corner of Spruce and MacDill, that the new development that was done there, you park in the back. There's a house that was currently built on just in the corner of MacDill, across the street from St. Joseph School, that you park in the back. But there's many alleys in West Tampa, first of all, that are bid closed since the 30s. And maybe they didn't even have one, because I wasn't around in the 30s, but I was close to it. The next thing was, there's some alleys, and you say it's the city's problem. well, it's the city's problem. If it's not the city's property, then the city's gonna have to buy it. I don't know where the alley's in. I don't have that information. I'm not trying to debate anyone, but I really don't know what the specifications were. West Tampa's got about 5 different zonings. You can have a 35-foot lot, you can have an 80-foot lot next to it. There's many things at West Tampa that make sense and don't make sense. I can't cast a net and catch a mullet. If I'm looking, I may catch a shark or I may catch a minnow in West Tampa because the alleys are different. That's all I'm saying.
If I could, counsel, just for a minute, I'm not saying do away with the request. Just don't mandate it when you have mitigating circumstances, and there are plenty of them. And if you have a mixed project where you have single family and multifamily, or townhouses, you can access the alley off of a portion of it, but not on the single family side. So, you know, there are some conditions that you can't simply meet. And I think that by producing that mandate, after you just remove the mandate from West Tampa, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I appreciate your time, and you know, we'll be talking about it in the future, I'm sure. So thank you very much.
Ms. Feely?
Thank you. Without Mr. Seal in chambers, it's a little bit difficult, but I just wanted to ask for a friendly amendment. So right now, for the ADUs, those are a special use 1 in Seminole Heights and in the other area by Sulphur Springs. And if we could amend this request to also let this be an S1 here, I understand he wants it to move forward and not delay until we come back handling this citywide. If we could do that, because by allowing it as a permitted use with those criteria, there's no appellate right now. The way that he has it written, if they don't meet one of those criteria, for it to find a way to you to then allow for it. So if we put it in as an S1 that's consistent with the way code is right now for those other 2 areas, we can then let it proceed. And then when we amend everything, we could bring it forward with that as well. But that, I think, would solve his issue for wanting it to move forward now, but our issue for making sure that the process allows for it to be implemented in an effective way.
Mr. Seal, are you agreeable to that? Quickly.
Without further sort of details or the ability to confer with the Tampa Heights Civic Association Board of Directors, I initially could say, yes, that appears to be a reasonable and legal friendly amendment. But again, while this may be legally filed under my name because of the city requirements, this is an effort of the Civic Association. So I cannot fully and completely commit to that without their feedback.
That's okay. We still have some time, I think. So if he would like to go back to his board and figure that out, I think we still have an opportunity to take care of that in that way. If not, we'll need to work through it as a permitted use. But right now, they're not permitted anywhere in the city. So I'd like to try to continue to have our code be consistent until such time we handle it as a matter citywide. Thank you.
Mr. Federico?
Thank you, Council. Ricky Federica. I reside in the Tampa Heights Historic District, and my firm, Dark Moss, also is located in the Tampa Heights Historic District. Early on in the crafting of this overlay guidance, I verbally expressed some reservations I had to Mr. Seal about some of the provisions. I think most of those have been shed since tying to the vision plan goals of pedestrian walkability and urban form. But I have some minor concerns that I don't want to derail anything per se, but I'd like to ask if there's a mechanism that you can request some consideration for these as it continues to move forward. Then I'd ask that you do that. If I could just go through some points. One is, if we go to the Elmo, there is a blanket exclusion of chain link fencing. And I don't want to sound like I'm defending chain link, but there is a character of limited chain link usage throughout the neighborhood historically and even in some modern times, including in the historic district, that I don't think a blanket exclusion is the intent of the guidelines in any location in the neighborhood. That's major, but I just want to kind of point out, and I'll resolve the rest of these together. You've been beating up this alley issue, and I don't disagree with the intent of wanting to use the alleys. I have an alley, and I use it on my corner of Central and Amelia, and on my office on 7th Avenue. But I know that there's technical standards associated with parking that you can't parallel park on the alley without a design exception. 42 feet, including the alley. So my concern here, not necessarily the mandate, but the unintentional consequences on the rear yard site plan design by pushing that to without a further understanding of what that may do to the urban form on those sections of the property. So I'm not averse to the intent, just that I feel like it needs a lesson from the tree code is that this stuff needs to be borne out in practice. Finally, and this may not be necessary, Ms. Feely just spoke to it, but I think there was an unintentional exclusion in the way the language was written that ADUs not be permitted in multifamily districts, which I know that's not the intent, but that is a way that I think this language can be read. And so I'm not asking you to change the approach, just to give some consideration to the very, very fine points of some of these provisions. Thank you.
All right, let's go back to the three people we've had on the line before, Mr. Soto, Ms. Pointer, and Ms. Strohmeyer. Are any of you there now?
Afternoon, Council. Camilo Soto, resident at 105 West Francis, Tampa Heights resident. Right off the bat, I just wanted to kind of let the council know I'm in full support of the proposed overlay. I think what's proposed here is actually less onerous and less regulatory than the current historic overlay that exists in the southeast corner of the Tampa Heights district. For the life of me, I haven't yet to get a very clear answer as to why only that southeast district got the historic overlay when it did, when the rest of the neighborhood has or had a very similar housing stock, which has been whittled away and torn down. But I did want to take advantage of the rest of my time to kind of address some of the council folks' comments, in particular to Councilman Goods. Mandating what's done with the alleyways, that cat's out of the bag. Lest I remind you, I spoke to the council about mandating the asphalting of these alleyways on new development. And mind you, I think Councilman Miranda mentioned West Tampa and how there's these pockets of asphalted alleyways. Those asphalted alleyways that currently exist, no civil engineering review was required, no stormwater engineering review is required. I also wanted to remind Councilman Goods, we mandate the overflow of new pools to go into these alleyways. So that cat is out of the bag. So as I mentioned before, when I spoke to you all on the 16th, it's about responsible development. And Councilwoman Hurtak hit on this. We want to encourage the use of these alleyways. How can we as a city encourage Vision Zero and then not encourage the use of these alleyways? We want a pedestrian urban core. Let's be responsible as far as how we develop and work with the development community, right? We're going to mandate they asphalt. We're going to mandate that they, direct the overflow of pools. Let's encourage the use of these alleyways and have the city come in, put in the stormwater infrastructure to accommodate those mandates that they've already been putting in. Let's have the city do what it should be doing to its own right of way and just setting it up so it's usable, right? Finally, I think, at the end of the day, this is a very good thing that I think the development community will still be able to, make a profit. We'll still be able to maintain the character of this neighborhood for years to come. And I think everyone will be able to, get to a point where this code is amenable to all parties involved. And so we should really support it. And I'd like to see the council today set it up for the next meeting and just continue allowing the Civic Association and all parties involved continue working with staff to get this really, finalized after so many years that it's been talked about. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Goods.
For the caller, I'm not saying not to do it. What I'm saying is, some of those alleyways are gonna have some challenges, and if you put the word mandate, I'm just trying to figure out how is that going to work? Some of those alleyways have trees in the middle of them. Some of those alleyways have been utilized for decades, have issues. So I'm just wondering, with development or new development, how are we gonna do that? How are we gonna be able to make sure that to turn a vehicle in there? I'm just looking at the what ifs. I'm all about if you can get it back there, or the developer wants to build it, do whatever, I don't have no issue, but I'm just saying the word mandate means you have to do it, and I don't know, we may run into some challenges, some legal challenges.
Councilwoman Hurtak, and then I'll come back to Councilman Miranda.
We just talked sort of about this a little bit earlier when we were talking about the percentage of commercial for multi-use buildings, and we said, hey, let's aim higher and then have them come back if they can't make it. And I feel like that this is the same exact example, where we say that they need to do it, and if they can't, they have to come back and prove it. That way, that's what we're doing with other things. And so this way, anybody who's going in to develop is looking at the idea of what the neighborhood wants, which is to use the alleys. And then if they can't make it work, they can come to staff, they can come to council and argue their point. What about that?
I have no problem, as long as there's an out, but the word mandate means.
But there's always an out, though. That's what we're here for half the time.
I can live with that.
Councilman Miranda.
I just want to reiterate what I've said. What I've heard now from two council members basically saying, I'm not against people parking in the back, but to throw a blanket cover, you must have a study done I'm just talking about West Tampa right now. Where I live, there's no alleys. The block behind me, there's no alley, but maybe 3 blocks away, there's an alley, but I don't know if it's 8 foot wide or 10 foot wide or 12 foot wide. I don't know that. So there's also codes regarding parking backing up or something. I remember when we did some other parts of the city, you have to have a certain amount of room to back in and out. And I forget how the legal terms that you all use. And that's what I'm talking about. You're doing one thing, but we don't know we conform with what the code says now. That's all.
I will add my 2 points, my 2 cents. Developers will pass on the product cost to the buyer.
Yeah.
That's true. That's without a doubt.
That's true.
We had just talked about accessory dwellings, where a person had 2 accessory dwellings that lived on a fixed income that helped them pay for their house.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to come in, put an accessory dwelling, put a garage under that accessory dwelling. They have a tree smack dab in the middle of the alleyway. They have to then either pay for that tree to get cut down, pay for the expenses for variance, that's not a developer passing on the cost. That is somebody who is a homeowner that wants to better their property, better themselves. To put a blanket statement on this hurts that person. There's my 2 cents. Okay. What is the pleasure of council?
I think I'm making the motion to pass this, or to forward the resolution. What's the terminology here? Transmit, thank you, I'm sorry. Transmit.
Who is going to second it?
I'll second.
We have a motion made by Councilwoman Hurtak, seconded by Councilman Vieira. Roll call vote.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Carlson, Goods,
I'm gonna go yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Now, what about, the use of the alleys to recommended, not mandating? That wasn't mentioned, so your motion is to pass it as is
Yep.
without, I don't know, I would support it with that amendment.
Again, I feel you can come back and ask for if you need a change.
I don't know if legal's reviewed the proposed text
Thank you.
amendment, but there needs to be probably in almost any overlay zoning category, some ability to ask for a variance because of specific conditions. And if that's not there, that does need to be added. So
Absolutely, and just to remind council, we are at the stage of workshop at this point. So we can ask the applicant to make those considerations for that amendment, and either council could direct the applicant to come back for another workshop, or we can have
So
it
there's
ready
still
by
another
first
bite at the
reading.
apple before it's-
Absolutely, we
Okay.
still have to go to planning commission, I'm gonna review that timeline with you, but if it is council's direction, you can ask the applicant to consider modifying
In
that
the
section
future, in
of
the future.
Yes,
Okay.
so when it comes back to you, that change is incorporated in the
Okay.
language.
All right, so I'll say yes with the ability to ask for that modification in the future. So this is not finalized today.
But I'm not adding that as an amendment.
Oh, I'm supporting
Okay,
it as
okay.
is, and then we'll discuss it in the
Okay,
future before
awesome.
it's written in stone.
Miranda?
I would vote yes for the same reason Mr. Maniscalco said. I want to make sure that we have the facilities for these things to happen, that's all.
Citro?
And I am in agreement with Councilman Maniscalco and Mr. Miranda. I will vote for this, but I want to take a deeper dive into this. Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Councilmember Carlson being absent at vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, did Ms. Travis have something to say since you stood up, sir?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Again, good afternoon. What I was going to say is this is the same situation, what you're debating right now is what we have in West Tampa. And we mandated, the developers come in and appeal it. We end up bringing that before you because we don't, as staff, don't have the ability to approve it. And then what's happening is they appeal it and then council approves it anyway. So when you're talking about adding regulatory timeline to things that you're already going to approve, we're trying to unwind some of that. So we're just looking at what we did in West Tampa, how it's working now. And so as we come back and we workshop this a little more, we'll be able to bring to you examples of where that has occurred in West Tampa, but it's not lost on me what Councilwoman Hartak is saying.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Yeah, I just want to say that that's the communities, the neighborhoods are coming to me and saying they really want these alleys. They want people to use them. And part of me feels like the developer needs to have, I mean, if they want the garages back there, they need to make the space for it. And we're going into a lot of these communities now that haven't been touched in years, and they're scared of development, and they're trying to find ways to make it work. And I think this honestly goes along with the community benefit agreement thing to some degree, where we have to look at what the community wants as well as developers want. And these are historic neighborhoods. You know, cars are not as small as they used to be, but there has to be a way. I mean, you look at South Tampa, those alleys are teeny tiny, and no one is making that complaint over there.
I think another way for us to look at this too is whatever the appeal process is, maybe there are certain criteria that if it meets a certain criteria, it could be staff approved instead of having to put in the queue and come before council. Because hearing you discuss this, we understand the intent in wanting to use the alleys where appropriate, where feasible, when possible. If we can do that, then it's approved. If it doesn't meet that criteria, then maybe it comes back to you at that point. So just understanding the intent and trying to unwind the code and allowing for flexibility, either at staff approval, and then taking it a step further to council, if that works.
And not to
Councilman
belabor the
Miranda.
point, and you know, I'm going back to the alleys and the other things, and I remember a lot of development happened in the much time back. Not only did you have a house, we had a driveway going in, but you had a curb that was made out of what? Granite. That was about 8 inches high, 4 or 5 inches wide. So that what did you solve? The flooding problem. It would go, water would run somewhere. We have nothing like that anymore. So, I mean, we're doing things fine, but I cannot, again, I'm not against people parking in the back, but I gotta have some information.
I think just the one last thing, just to remember, this is a privately
understand.
initiated amendment, and staff has asked the applicant to look at the language, and so just hearing you do that, it's not publicly initiated, and
I
it's,
understand.
you know, so I think you can make that request of the applicant and
understand.
understanding what your expectations are when this comes back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Doc, we have one more on this?
Yes, Council. Thank you so much. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination, and this is the last privately initiated amendment we have for today. The applicant is Angela Robert. This is a request to amend the CBD, the Central Business District sign code requirements. So this would consider some amendment to what's allowed as far as building signs, placements, and orientation of signage. And this would be contained within the Central Business District only. And staff has no objections to this request, and I believe the applicant is online. She was gonna participate virtually.
Yes, ma'am, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Are you hearing me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I also have a very, very short presentation, if I can share my screen.
Can you enlarge that, please?
Yes, I think so. Are you seeing a proposed
you.
text amendment?
Yes, ma'am, we are good.
Okay, if you can see it, then that's what matters. I wanted to just talk a little bit about the goals of this text amendment. It's with the current Central Business District sign regulations, when the code was updated a few years ago to go to a form-based code, the sign code was left largely untouched. There were some changes that were made to make sure that the buildings were oriented on the first level of the building and on the top level of the building. But all of the other regulations concerning the types of signs, the sizes of signs, and so forth, you have to go back to other parts of the code that are designed for a more suburban form. The changes we're proposing are to match a more downtown commercial form. So the first proposed amendment would allow building signage to be oriented towards any building frontage, or signage to be oriented towards any building frontage, not only the portion that is oriented towards the primary entrance. If you imagine in a downtown environment where businesses are located on upper stories, you want to be clear that there's not a front door, there could be one front door for the entire building, but that may be not related to where the actual business is. And we would like to be able to utilize all four sides of the building. Now, one thing I would say about all of these changes, proposed changes, is that right now we can get some of these provisions through design exceptions. We're hoping to be able to avoid that need for a design exception by and streamline kind of what staff is doing and streamline everybody's time, make sure that the developer has some predictability before they have to go through a process. The second proposed amendment, currently, again, projecting signs are allowed, but we would like to move over those provisions that relate generally and make two changes to the 6 requirements for projecting signs. The first of those is that there's a provision that projecting signs have to be located at least 10 feet apart. We would like an exception where the two signs are actually located on different sides of the building. And that would allow, as you can see in this picture of this illustration, for corner signage to be less than 10 feet apart. We would also like to reduce the required clearance from 10 feet to 9 feet above a sidewalk so that it's a more pedestrian scale. The proposed amendment number 3, currently the way the sign code is written for signs, it allows each retail front to have a variety of different sign types. We want to change the mix to give more flexibility to retail businesses that want to have signage, a variety of signage types. Maybe they have a combination of building sign, which is on a wall, a projecting sign, and a canopy sign, and also to be able to do some unique signage types to accommodate building logos or business logos or some kind of unique design into the signage type. This illustration gives kind of an example of the existing code where you can see that the mix is not very dynamic. It requires uniformity, but it doesn't necessarily achieve that uniformity because you still get a mix of signage types. And what we're proposing doesn't actually add additional signage to the building, but it allows the businesses to have some variety. And then, other than that, I have nothing else to present. If you have questions, we can answer those.
Councilman Maniscalco.
So basically, we're going back to downtown of the mid-20th century, because we had signage like that before we tore everything down and before we took off all the neon and all that, but it was all pedestrian based. That's why in some of the existing historic buildings, you'll see the name of the shops at the floor level. So when pedestrians walk, they can see it. You can see this on North Franklin Street. And we're just going back to that. So, I mean, that's how I see it, which is good. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilman Miranda.
No, I'm just remembering that we had a sign inspection here in the city of Tampa 20 years ago. We had 20 or 30 years ago, some ordinance changes that eliminated some of the sign, but we're not talking about those big old signs. We're talking about walkable signs. Am I correct?
That is correct. All of these signs are designed for pedestrians to see.
We need address signs
rather than cars.
Streets like Del Mabry, half of them you can't find where you're going. And it's difficult throughout the city for a tourist or somebody that lives close by to come in and travel one of our main arteries. You don't know where you're at because you can't read the signs. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilwoman Hurtak? I've lived in this city for 60 years, excuse me, I'm sorry, 40 years. Sometimes I still have to use maps and Waze and other apps on my phone just to get around. All right, what is the pleasure of council?
Public comment.
Public comment, yes, and I've got to go to the same three people. Ms. Selmeyer, Ms. Pointer, and Soto, are you on the line?
Ms. Pointer, if you're on the line and you wanted to provide public comment, please unmute yourself.
Okay, what is the pleasure of council? Second. I have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goose. Roll call vote.
Carlson? Goulds?
Yes.
Vieira?
Yes.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Miranda?
Yes.
Hurtak?
Yes.
And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Councilmember Carlson being absent at vote.
And Chairman and Council, thank you so much, LaShawn, Doc Development Coordination. I just wanted to review with you and for the public, the processing schedule. So just so the public has an idea, the next steps would be the Planning Commission briefing will be held in July, then the Planning Commission public hearing in August, and then we will be back before council, before you in September for first reading.
Thank you
And that's
very
the
much.
processing schedule. Thank you so much, council. And just so you know, we have two additional, which Abby mentioned earlier this morning. There are two additional privately initiated text amendments, which are currently in process now. That would complete the remainder of the privately initiated text amendments that we have in cycle. And then we will move to all publicly initiated. And thank you so much for your time today.
Now our final agenda item. Agenda item number 5, CM 21-69784.
Good afternoon, Council. Rob Rosner, Director of Economic Opportunity. We pull up the slide deck, please. Next slide, please. So we had okay, my apologies. Thank you. So we included a memo with this agenda item, and I'm going to go over that with you and then our process through the public engagement process. So just to summarize what my memo says is that we made these engagements on May 9th and May 16th. We had approximately 30 to 40 attendees in person and in virtual. We also sent out some emails to the development community, and we also had a survey that we did through the process. And we allowed a certain amount of time for that to happen. So we held this at the Martin Luther King Center. The presentation that we made was about 10 minutes long each time. We gave a high-level overview of what a CBA was, and then we opened it up to community to allow them to tell us what they'd like to see in their neighborhood and how they could see this being a benefit to them and what does that mean for them as a community. So we did a public video here, and it's about 1 minute, so those folks that were coming to the meetings, they could learn a little bit about it ahead of time. I'm not sure if this will go through the video, but we'll move on. Okay. So we did a question and answer statement for about an hour and a half each time, and then I fielded a number of calls afterwards that was able to fill in a number of constituents that had additional questions. And then we stopped by each of the different CACs that had additional questions and addressed those. So on those, we alternated between in-person and virtual guests. And then we did a community-wide survey that we allowed to be open through the 27th. And we asked 3 basic questions. So we had 192 responses. Average response was about a minute long, and it was completed on the 27th. So the first one was, were you aware of it, and do you know what it is? So we saw about a little more than half did understand it, but the other half wasn't as sure. So this education process was very useful. So this is just a heat map of where we saw our responses from. So it looks like we had fairly good coverage. Now our intent for this was just to see if the community was interested in this being either a policy action or if this should be created as an ordinance. So we didn't hit every single neighborhood in the city, but we was open to everybody. And it was just to get a sense of if this is a good idea or not. So the things that we heard from the results were that recreational and experiential type amenities were the ones that were most favored. Obviously, there was affordable housing on this, and workforce development was not as high as I thought it would be, but it was still significant. And then on the other, this is kind of a mashup of the different things that we saw the community respond to, from like dog parks and community pools and sidewalks, streetscapes, that kind of thing, that whole experience of what their front door looks like, and if this is going to be an urban edge, they want it to feel like home, not just a sterile place. So with that, as I mentioned in my memo, that we sent an email out to the developers that had all done work with us in the past, and we got a number that came back, and for the most part, what we heard was they were supportive of it. They just didn't want it to slow down the process, but they liked the idea of engaging early than trying to figure out after the fact what we should be doing. And they like hearing from the community because they'd rather address the community early instead of being reactionary. So I think the PowerPoint disappeared. If we can get it back for 1 second. Okay, so just as the requested action that we have for you is we'd like to, if you're in favor of supporting the community benefits agreements, we request that a motion in favor of staff coming back in the future, 6 to 8 months, to do the proper public engagement with initial language and to hold public forums. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought. If there are any other further items for consideration or inclusion in these matters, we're here to listen to what your thoughts are.
Councilman Goods.
A couple of things. I don't know where we're at with the engagement, because I did get calls about some concerns. I think I told you and Ms. Travis about those concerns. Hope we are addressing those and continue working on those. Now, I'm looking at your date of February 16, 2023, and I think this has been on the table for a while now. So to me, I mean, I know we have a lot of things going on, but that's a far out stretch for an ordinance when it's been back since 21. I mean, that's a stretch to say February. Give me somebody. What are we going to be doing that long to get to February?
So the public engagement process, we wanted to make sure there was plenty of time to hit the 74 different neighborhoods that there are, and so we want to make sure there's plenty of time to get the proper public engagement. And we know that between now and there's holidays and other things that can really, have an issue on that effect.
So we're saying we're going to try to hit all 74 neighborhood associations. That's what we're saying?
Well, we're gonna address every one of them. Ideally, we're gonna do 8 or 10 at a time, and of course, that's part of what we will work with our neighboring departments to make sure we engage the public properly. And again, make sure everybody's heard before we get this through.
And I'm just saying that, Rob, because you threw it out there now. So I'm just you threw that out there. So that's what I'm expecting, that 74 is going to be heard, because I don't think that's realistic.
We'll try.
To be honest with you. I think being realistic to look at, you have quadrants. You have 4 quadrants of this city, and being able to get if it has a CRA in it, and then those neighborhood associations, I think that's a little more realistic to characterize.
Let me interrupt real quickly. I mean, as you all will remember, we have already instituted a CRA policy that requires a community benefits agreement if the city is providing $500,000 or more in value of land or money toward a project. So we already are instituting that, and we have already entered into our first community benefits agreement relative to the Rome Yard development as well. So
right, that's the first one we had the CRE Institute, but now we're talking about a citywide plan. But I'm just saying, you give me some, I'm expecting that, so I'm looking at a little more realistic goal. But that time frame, to me, it's kind of far.
Alicia Drumgo, Deputy Administrator, Councilman, if you would like for us to draft something and bring it back to you, we can certainly do that.
I'm just looking at the 23. I mean, that's a long time, and I think we can move along and get these neighborhood associations and call them together and come up and see what they're talking about, because we know what the benefits about. It's about, if someone's coming in that neighborhood and building, making sure that the neighborhood is on board, and make sure what is the benefit the neighborhood's going to get out of that. That's what it's all about. So it shouldn't take us that long to say 2023 to draft something. We've got already some type of ordinance or ordinance. It's not ordinance. What is Mr. Massey? What you call it?
we have a policy, CRA policy. And St. Petersburg has also adopted an ordinance, which I think you had asked us to look at. So there are some models for us to look at.
So this would be the city ordinance versus the CRA as a policy. So I'm asking that time be cut down. I mean, it's a long time, I believe.
Sure. Right. Sure. So we'll draft something now, and then we'll bring it back to you, and then we'll
meet with the people again. But I'm just saying, give me a little better time frame than that.
Yeah, how about we come back in October with it?
I can deal with October.
Is that fair? Okay. Good deal.
Do with October.
Thank you.
And just to
You want a
finish
motion
up,
on that now, or you want to just?
Yeah. We do, please.
I think you want to take some public comment,
Yeah.
and then maybe some other council members have some questions or concerns.
Is there any other council members that would like to make any comments or ask questions? If not, I do remember hearing Ms. Sanchez on the line. We also have Ms. Strohmeyer and Ms. Pointer that would like to talk to this agenda item. Ms. Sanchez, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Sandy Sanchez. I live at 2705 West Fig Street in the Army Gardens community, the home of the Vila Brothers Park. I'm exhausted from this day, so I can imagine how exhausted you all. I don't know how many items I wanted to speak on, but didn't realize that we would be able to speak on them in between those issues. But I'm here to give my support to number 5 on the agenda, which is a staff report discussing the possibility of implementing the community benefits agreement. It is interesting to me that this administration has already attempted to make 2 presentations to a few neighborhoods. These presentations, and I know you've all heard this, were fraught with technical issues and poor organization, but it did give us a glimpse of what could be an avenue for neighborhoods that might be able to utilize to openly communicate between neighborhoods, developers, and contractors. I ask that community involvement be revisited with responsible organization and accurate technical expertise. The use of community benefit agreements along with the expansion area for the radius for the good neighbors notices could be the beginning of a leveling field for neighborhoods to defend themselves against intrusive, aggressive developers that appear to be backed by the city planning department, and a comprehensive plan that supports concrete monoliths which intrude in our quality of life. Communities are at a disadvantage when they have to fight against those that choose to support a project which is consistent to the comprehensive plan and bypasses the needs of a community, which all support that pie in the sky goal for us making Tampa the next great city. Neighborhoods are infected with comprehensive plans that were marked consistent, that plague our neighborhoods with excess traffic and designs that are not consistent with the neighborhood. The community benefit program, expansion of the radius for good neighbor letters, and the implementation, and I'm putting this in your ear, of a community advocate paid for the city would also give the communities a fighting chance against those that rubber stamp projects to avoid confrontation with developers. It used to be that council was made up of elected officials that were elected to help support communities. All of you made that promise. Now a lobbyist has divided this council from those of you that are still listening and those of you that want a discussion to be over quickly so you can rubber stamp another set of plans. I ask that you support the community benefit agreement as a beginning for dialogue between developers, communities, and the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Is Ms. Strohmeyer on the line?
Ms. Strohmeyer, if you're on the line, please unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes to speak.
I am not hearing Ms. Strohmeyer. Ms. Pointer, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Please and thank you.
This is Stephanie Pointer again. Community-based agreements. I would have loved to have been at the meetings, maybe. I heard, I've never in my time in leadership in the neighborhood associations had so many complaints about a meeting as I received about the first community benefits agreement meeting. I bet you I had 15 emails about it. I think the community-based agreement is ingenious. I think it shouldn't just be for land that is controlled by the city. I think there needs to be a different sort of method, just like the one that Carol Ann and I brought with Southeastern in the last couple of weeks, where we created a community-based agreement with them in order to get affordable housing. I think our citizens are becoming more savvy, as was shown by the Tampa Heights presentation of their PETA, which I support. I didn't get a chance to speak on that. I just want to make sure that you guys understand that community-based means that the neighborhoods are involved. And if we're not, then we're not getting anywhere. Bottom line is, and even Carol Ann and I both have learned by going to different neighborhoods. We talked to different neighborhoods about, hey, you need to get affordable housing. And they said, no, we have plenty. And we're like, wow, that's the first time we've ever heard that. Because only the neighborhoods know about the neighborhood. And no matter how many times we drive through there, you don't know what that red light is going to impact until you live there. So I think that including this, and just like Sandy said, I have to ring true on everything she said. The good neighbor notice, which we've been talking to you guys about. Everybody but Councilman Miranda has spoke with us about the good neighbor notice. We hope to get an appointment with you, Charlie. So please take into consideration and please move forward with this community benefits agreement. And the neighborhoods would love to help with this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have anybody else. Ms. Massey.
One thing I do want to make it clear to council and to the public as well, the community benefits agreement process cannot be associated with any entitlement approval processes. Can't be, rezoning can't be contingent upon it. Special use approval cannot be contingent upon it. This is only done in situations where really the developer has to work with the city in some regards. That's really how it has to be done legally. So I just want to make sure you all are aware of that limiting parameter on what we can do relative to community benefits agreements, but just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. Thank you.
Move to transmit.
Mr. Goose?
There's nothing really to transmit this time. I think they have some further work to do to bring it back. But I think they're looking for a date in October to bring back a draft ordinance, maybe for further discussion.
And after hearing Ms. Pointer's comment, Mr. Goose, is October still good enough for you?
Yeah, I think it's still.
Or would you like for more community involvement?
I think they can do it all within this time. I think October 6th good for you, brother? Huh?
Councilman, I think part of the effort was to do the community engagement initially, so do that up front and then come back with the draft language. But in reversing that, we're asking you to allow us to draft the language and then do the community engagement. And so, you know, we're looking for a little bit of grace on that, I think, just time-wise, right? Because we realize the community engagement will take a little bit of time. So we were looking for either the extended time frame or to be able to bring you the language first and then come back for the engagement.
But my only
piece. concern,
if I give you a letter, and then we're saying October, that means you're gonna go back to community, that's gonna draw me out again. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, give it to me straight.
I am going to come up here and defend my staff for a minute, please. Because they're gonna keep nodding and trying to do it, and so allow me for a minute.
You the boss.
Okay. The amount of work that we're doing with community engagement on all of our housing issues, all of the things that we're standing up, all of the engagement, we're a limited team, and we cannot do all the public engagement that you want us to do on every issue and bring it back to you for October. So what I do believe is that from the community benefits agreement perspective, that we generally have an idea of what the community needs. Like, we have a framework of what we need. If we bring that draft ordinance back to you, you will have public comment related to that. In order for us to touch every single neighborhood where it may not apply and to make sure that the residents understand that it cannot be, community benefits agreements cannot be associated with any entitlement decisions that's brought before this body. And so if we wanted to bring it back to you in October, I believe that we can do that. But we cannot do the kind of outreach that you're expecting and asking for by October. It will be a public meeting. We will make sure that the word is out that this draft ordinance is going to be before you. But I'm gonna stand up here and even though they're gonna agree to things and say, like, at some point, please allow us to do the work. We cannot do all this public engagement by October.
I believe you bring the draft ordinance back, and then after you bring the draft ordinance back, the community can hear it, and from that point, you can make those adjustments.
That's right, absolutely.
You may want to look at, I don't know what's on your October workshop agenda, but maybe that's the appropriate time, and then it can be brought back for discussion in another workshop setting so that the public can engage with council and you all can talk about how the ordinance language may need to be tweaked at that time, so.
October 20th is a workshop, it looks like to me. It's a regular?
Regular session.
27th is a workshop.
And what's on the, can you tell what's on the?
The sound ordinance is on there right now.
The noise ordinances? Okay, so that may take up most of
Oh,
the
yeah.
27th. We may be looking at November workshop.
No.
It doesn't look like we have a workshop again until January.
Okay, because of the holiday schedule.
Can we put this on a regular session?
We could.
Then why, Councilman Goose, why don't you put it for the 20th?
Yeah. We were just talking through some of the logistics of 20th.
All right, you know, it looks kind of heavy there, because I really want to get this off the plate, but it looks kind of heavy.
Do you want to know what it's heavy with? Everything else that these people are doing here. And so, but I do believe.
But I've said it, we're no longer a small city anymore. The
Agreed.
time has changed. people want change, and things change.
And we're working tirelessly to provide
so we
that
gotta get more
change.
people in the house.
Voice up.
All right, so,
Let's move forward with this.
motion,
You want to make a
Yes,
motion?
sir.
Make a motion.
Motion for, community business ordinance, to come back, draft to come back on October 20th.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Roll call vote.
Under staff report?
Goods,
Under staff reports, yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Carlson, Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Council Member Citro being absent at vote.
Information and reports, please, Councilman Vieira.
Yeah, just really fast if I may. I want for the October 2022 workshop for staff to come back on ideas. A couple of years ago, our former mayor Buckhorn did a autism-friendly Tampa. And I'd like to look at ideas how we can improve city services to the extent that we can, and I'm sure they can, for people who are hard of hearing and deaf. I know we all know a lot of good folks, including DC Gustafus and others who are very, very passionate about that issue. So just putting that out there, if I may.
We have a motion made by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then one other thing, if I may, this isn't a motion, but just for the public, I saw an article that someone sent me that our Hillsborough County Animal Shelter is at 500% of capacity, and there's a free adoption day Saturday where all fees for Hillsborough County are going to be reduced. I'm going to be going tomorrow to Falkenberg to the Pet Resource Center to try to promote this, but just for the city and others to promote this, for there are so many animals out there who need a good home, and that's a great opportunity. Thank you very much.
Councilman Maniscalco.
No.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
No.
Councilman Goose. Councilman Miranda.
Very quickly, sir, I'd like to make a motion to schedule Thursday, August the 4th, the year 2022, number 1 of the agenda, the presentation of fiscal year of 2023 budget by Mayor Jane Castor.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Second one, sir, I would like to make a motion for council to schedule the fiscal year 2023 budget hearings. First public hearing for the special call meeting on Tuesday, September 6th, 2022 at 5:01. And the second public hearing to be held at a special call meeting scheduled on Tuesday, September 20th, 2022 at 5:01.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's it, sir.
I'm not finished. Give me this thing. Goodness. Ms. Feely, Ms. Travis, Mr. Benson, and everybody that's sitting right there, we have accomplished one hell of a lot today. I thank you for your patience. I thank you for presenting the way which you did. And council, thank you very much. Mr. Massey, thank you. And Madam Clerk, thank you.
Move to receive file.
Motion to receive and file by Councilman
So
Maniscalco,
second.
seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned until 5:01.
Don't leave the